Rick, let me start a little bit with you. How did we, of course, we all know you for the Percy Jackson novels, but tell me how you and Mark came together to write this element that's the next stage of that universe.
Sure. Well, a few years back, got the idea to write a spin-off book with Nico D'Angelo, the son of Hades from Percy Jackson's world. Nico has always been a fan favorite. He is one of the most popular characters next to Percy Jackson. But I didn't feel like I really understood his character to the extent I would need to write an entire novel from his point of view. Nico is not only the son of Hades, he's got all these incredible powers, but he's also a young man who is gay, who is learning how he identifies and struggling with all that goes along with that. And that's not an experience I have personally. Although I've taught many students of any kind of background you can imagine, I felt like I needed some help understanding what makes him who he is and kind of what his journey has been like. So I sort of cast around with my editor looking for another author who might be able to help me kind of be more authentic about who Nico was. Fortunately, Mark Oshiro knew the Percy Jackson books, and I knew Mark's works and really loved them. They were available, and we got together and started talking and sort of just kind of hit it off and really liked each other's ideas. The first book that came out of that was The Sun and the Star, which was on the bestseller list for, I don't know, like a bajillion months and
Yeah.
did really, really well. And so The Court of the Dead is our second collaboration together, which is about Nico and his boyfriend Will Solis, and their adventures continue.
Perfect. Mark, why don't you jump in here? Tell us about, you're getting the opportunity, to work
Yeah.
with Rick here, and also how it is to write a character like Nico, considering today's
Oh
political
gosh.
environment as well.
Yeah. So I had been I'll say recent Percy Jackson convert. It was 2018 when I read The Lightning Thief. I was about to go on tour for my first book, Anger is a Gift, and needed a book to read. And a friend was like, "Could you please just read Percy Jackson?" And I was like, "Okay, fine." And then I ended up reading all 14 books in like 10 days because that's how I read and how I love things. And so even then, it was not on my radar. This was not a dream that I had or something that I thought was a possibility. And then I get this email and then a call. And as it came together, one part of this that's been so fun and exciting is not only did you get sort of a front row seat to someone else's writing, but we work really well together because we outline stories beforehand and then we draft. And so there's been this really cool synchronicity in getting to write books, now two books together. I My favorite character before any of this had ever happened was Nico D'Angelo. Like I was just drawn to his character. There were some very uncanny similarities between some of his upbringing and some experiences that I had. So I felt that I was very primed to write this character. That being said, it's a character someone else created. And so I did have this both external pressure of I'm an outsider coming into this, but then also the internal pressure of I want to do this character justice. I want to make sure that he's written in a way that is compassionate, that is meaningful, but also doesn't sort of negate and ignore what his history has been. And more than anything, the response to The Sun and the Star from especially from kids, we met people on the book tour itself, but since The Sun and the Star has come out, I can't even count how many times I've been brought to a middle school or a high school to speak specifically about that book and getting to meet young people who are like, I know what this experience is like. I had this similar experience. I relate to Will because I act, and it is astounding. It is a very surreal thing to get to write these characters who mean a lot to me, but then also to see the impact that your words have on someone who is young, who, by the way, also loves reading. And these kids still love reading, and it is so exciting. I know we hear a lot of stuff about kids aren't reading anymore and they don't like it. And I'm like, oh no, they love their books. And it has been really cool to see that excitement translate to, reading these books in particular.
So talking about the Court of the Dead, now from what I understand, you've got the Cocoa Puffs are there, a creative way of
Yeah.
embodying emotions. And so, what inspired you to give Nico's inner struggle a physical form, and what messages do you
Ooh,
want kids to take away from this book?
what a question.
Great question.
You,
Yeah.
you, I do know this. You created the Cocoa Puffs, Rick. That is your
Well,
idea.
we have to give a shout out to Becky, my wife,
Yeah.
because, she came up with the idea that if you're going to have these, sort of little fluff balls of darkness, these manifestations of your emotions that are following you around in this little pack, they should be called the Cocoa Puffs because they're in mythology, they're called cacodemons, and it's just a lot more fun and easier to say Cocoa Puffs. But I mean, I think it is like a lot of myths. It is a way to make a metaphor out of something that we all experience. I mean, we all feel like there are times when we wish our emotions weren't quite so obvious, like they weren't maybe following us around like this little, band of Cocoa Puffs do. And in the book, Nico doesn't have that option. If he's feeling angry, anger comes bouncing up and sits on his shoulder. Or if he's feeling alone, loneliness comes up. So it's a way to talk about emotions that is both a little funny and silly, but also really relevant to how I think kids feel a lot of the times. Like, I think we all have felt like we all have these emotions bouncing around inside of us, and they can get away from you pretty quickly.
Right.
I,
Mark, jumping back to you real quick.
yeah.
So what message do you want readers to have as far as, they're struggling with their own identity, grief,
Yeah.
belonging? Yeah. What do you want them to come out from this?
Look, I want to. I actually don't think I've ever told you this, Rick, and I love that these keep coming out in interviews. But the moment reading the outline for Sun the Star, when I was like, I have to write this, was the Cocoa Puffs, and for me, it was because, and what I feel like we really got to do with Court of the Dead is, I'm very proud of my own journey with therapy the last like 6, 7 years. Seeing a therapist in New York, and then when I moved to Atlanta, have had therapists almost the whole time I've lived here. Is in particular. I was not raised to learn how to feel an emotion. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what that meant. I just was like, yeah, we have emotions, but like, especially growing up, being raised as a boy in the United States, it was, oh, you better not have emotions at all. And so much of what is so compelling about the Cocoa Puffs and then the journey specifically in the Court of the Dead is Nico, like Rick said, can't ignore his emotions because they hang out and they bother him and they jump on his pant leg. So it's a lot of what I hope kids get out of it and what I hope they get out of this story is that value of being able to sit there and be like, yeah, I'm actually angry. I'm sad. And here's why. I'm going to actually sit here and think about it. And because Nico doesn't have the choice, it appears on the page in a way that's I really like and was really fun and compelling to write. But to say to young people, the emotions that you're having are very real. And here is how this character, who's had a lot of emotions over the years, is learning how to deal with them. I mean, the book literally opens with him in a Mr. D therapy session, which is a little chaotic. But, I like that this book is grounded in this emotional journey for Nico. And so I am hoping that the kids who read this feel some sort of validation for whatever feelings they happen to be having, growing up in this world.
Right. This is for both of you guys, but considering, that you're dealing so well with LGBTQ characters in here and doing such a great job of blending it into the story, but is there concern about pushback, from conservative groups or anything? Because things seem a lot touchier now than they have been, even in the recent past. No?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
they didn't do anything with Sun and the Star. Here's a very interesting thing, which is that I have received more pushback than I can count for all my original novels, sometimes within a week or two of them coming out. But I think there's something so compelling to me about they're even they realize, oh, we can't touch Percy Jackson. We can't do anything. We can't. You try to take a Percy Jackson book from a kid in a middle school, good luck. And not to say that there isn't pushback against them or there hasn't been commentary on it, but it has been fascinating. No,
Okay.
unless correct me if I'm wrong, right? Like they kind of
Yeah.
leave you alone.
I mean, Percy Jackson was born in San Antonio. That story was told as a bedtime story to my own son while I was teaching in San Antonio. It's the place I grew up. I'm well familiar
Mhm.
with the community. And like most great communities, it's made up of a lot of different kinds of people. And if it's going to function, we have to learn to respect one another. We have to learn to live together. That's the only way forward. And I think most people would probably agree with that. Most people would say, okay, that's fair. We need to talk. We need to figure out how we can coexist.
Well,
And so, if nothing else, I hope the book is a chance to do that. And I've seen it be a chance to do that, to talk. And even if it's not something that, is my own personal experience or someone else's personal experience, these are very human characters. They're going through things all humans go through. So I hope it's something that any young reader can relate to and say, you know what, I felt scared too. I felt judged unfairly.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
maybe we can start out with some of the San Antonio questions. Can you give me a little bit of background of your history of San Antonio?
Yeah, sure. Born and raised in San Antonio. I went to Alamo Heights for high school. So I spent the majority of my early life there. Met my wife, Becky, at Alamo Heights when we were kids. Started dating when we were 16, and we've been together ever since. So a lot of history there. We went to UT Austin together and spent some years there. My first teaching job as a middle schooler was in New Braunfels, New Braunfels High School. Sorry, middle school.
Hmm.
We then moved to the Bay Area in California for a while, moved back to Texas. Our kids were raised there. I taught at St. Mary's Hall for a number of years. And so a lot of history there. We have been now in Boston since, oh gosh, 2013. But, the majority of my life has been in San Antonio.
So we were talking before about you here, and then also that you spent time at St. Mary Hall. So tell me a little bit about that time there.
St. Mary's Hall was a really great experience for me. We had been, my wife and I, and our two young boys, who were both born in the San Francisco Bay Area. We decided to move home to San Antonio where our own parents would be around so the kids could grow up and know their grandparents and know the family and all of that. So we made the move. I taught middle school for 7 years, I want to say, at St. Mary's Hall. Loved the kids there, very familiar to me. I mean, it was not that different than, Alamo Heights when I was a kid. A lot of the families knew each other, and, San Antonio is a big city, but it's also a very small community. Everybody knows everybody, right?
Hmm.
So it was interesting getting to know San Antonio again as a teacher this time, as an older adult, as a father. And while I was at St. Mary's Hall, while I was having those years in San Antonio with my family, was when everything kind of came together for me. And I realized, I had been writing a bunch of adult private eye novels about a character named Trace Navarre, that all of those were set in San Antonio. Started those in the 90s. I had been a middle school teacher during that same time and telling stories to my own students about Greek mythology. And my students would always ask me, Mr. Riordan, why don't, you're writing books and you're teaching, why don't you write something for us? But it was only when my own son was a student at St. Mary's Hall and was struggling with ADHD and dyslexia that all of those threads came together. And I realized, you know what? Maybe my students are right. I made up the story of Percy Jackson as a bedtime story for him. I read it first to some of my students at St. Mary's Hall. They were my first editors. And then from that feedback, I decided to send it off and get it published. Lo and behold, all these years later, here I am, and I'm a children's author.
Now I understand that some of those people from your St. Mary's Halls, they actually made it into the book. I'm told, let's say like Mrs. Dodd, Mr. Nickel, and Travis and Connor Stoll. Can you tell us how
Yeah.
those real people became characters in your book?
Sure. Well, because it was for my son and a bedtime story, and because he was a student at the school where I taught, I didn't know this was going to be published. I just thought it would be fun to include some people that he knew. Mrs. Dodds was, in fact, the pre-algebra teacher and my colleague at the school. Mr. Bruner was the Latin teacher at the school. So I used their names for characters in the book. Some of my students knew that I wrote books and asked if I would name characters after them. Travis and Connor Stoll are former students of mine. And so, yeah, I mean, Charles Beckendorf, also a former student of mine. So that was a lot of fun when they realized it was going to be published. I had to go to Mrs. Dodds, for instance, and say, "Oh, Mrs. Dodds, by the way, I turned you into a monster and had you killed. I'm really sorry." But she was cool.
She was good with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And Reagan, please feel free to give me any wrap, and we're getting tight on our time here. But Rick, what advice would you give to maybe some of the students that are there now that
Mhm.
maybe want to follow that same path?
So, I mean, I guess I would say when I was growing up in San Antonio, I didn't think that, published authors came from places like San Antonio. I didn't think that was possible for me. I thought they all lived in London or something, or at least New York, some big, big metropolis. And I didn't have the kind of cosmopolitan, worldly experience that a real writer would have. But what I discovered is that writers are just real people and they can come from anywhere. They don't have to go to college to study writing, even. They can simply draw on their experience. If you like reading, that's the most important thing. You want to write, you got to read. Read a lot. I'm not saying what to read, read whatever you like, but just read something. Second thing is, if you want to write, you just got to write. There's no class that will teach you how to do it. Nobody can, sort of give you any magic formula to get through writer's block. You just got to sit down in the chair and start typing out the words. And that's the only way to learn. And the third and most important thing that I learned was you can't give up. Just keep trying. My own eighth grade teacher at Alamo Heights Middle School, junior school back then, said, Rick, you should get published. I want you to submit this story to a magazine. And I did. It got rejected. And so did the 20 stories after that. It wasn't until I was 30 that I was finally published. But if I'd given up, I wouldn't be here.
So Rick, you said that Percy Jackson was a five book series. So that's said and done. But where do you see the Percy Jackson universe going from here?
Well, right now we're really concentrating on the television show that's with Disney Plus. We are the second season of that comes out December 10th, and we're filming the third season right now. So that is one kind of incarnation of the world that's in place. And really, I don't have a master plan for where the Percy Jackson universe goes. I just kind of try to find new and interesting ways into the story that I haven't done yet, and that I think that young readers will enjoy. So whatever sort of comes to the top of the list tends to be the story that I feel the strongest about.
Okay, Mark, where do we go from here as far as what you see?
I'm also we've been talking about this today too, is I even with my own career, I'm not a master planner. I don't think more than maybe a book or two ahead. Um, we have only briefly made reference to I do have an idea for a third one if we get to do one, but we don't have plans for it. And the intent with both of them was we'll do one. This was a great experience. We had an idea, it turned into a second one. We'll see. I know we both are. I had the time of my life writing these books. They're so much fun, and getting to tour with them is also a lot of fun. But we don't do this in a way where we're setting things out years in advance. I have to write another. I just finished writing a book. I got to write another book in like a month or two. Like, so we just try to figure out what is interesting to both of us, and if we have the time to do it. But I mean, the short answer is yes. I want to write more.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to do
Thank you,
this. I
John.
really
Thank
appreciate
you.
this.
And Deborah, tell me a little bit about your past relation, so to speak, with Rick.
With Rick, well,
I
came from the lower school to the middle school, and he came soon after. I just found out today, and we taught sixth grade together for a long time. I was math, he was English at that time, right? He started out English, and you know, you have the usual team meetings, and I loved going in and talking to him. We'd talk about kids and try to solve some problems, and he was very good with kids, and they just loved him. So I always liked to get his advice about things. He was very calming. He did Tai Chi, so he was very calming. And I just enjoyed talking to him about the children. He loved the children. He cared about them. They really related to Rick very well. He was always very positive with them. And I loved going in to observe in his classroom because he was his usual calm self. And he was a real storyteller, too. And when I went in and observed 8th grade history, his history class was like a story. He was really good. And even the questions, he seemed to work that in real well with discussion with the children. So it's just a real thrill to work with him. I didn't know I was a character in his book until the end of the school year that year that the book went to the publisher. And one of the children, we were on our way to Schlitterbahn, to the class party, and one of the kids said, well, what do you think about being a character in Rick's book? I said, oh, I didn't know I was. And they said, yeah, you're a math teacher. So I thought, okay, there's a 6th grade math teacher, right? Rick's sitting over here, of course, trying to do his grading, his finals and everything. I said, Rick, you didn't tell me I was a character in your book. And he said, oh, I didn't. I hope it's okay. I said, well, and the galleys, what do you call them? The galleys was already sent to the publisher. So that's how I found out I was even in the book. But I've had a lot of mileage off that character. I've really enjoyed it, honestly, I have. He made me very mean, so I was very strict. I didn't think I was mean. I know some of the kids did. But I said, well, why'd you make me so mean? And he said, if you were really that mean, I wouldn't have put you in my book. And so he took stories from kids. And that's how and I really did have a motorcycle. Kids always, that's how I got started. I really did drive a motorcycle. I had a leather jacket. And I did that until I got married and got pregnant. Then I quit riding that motorcycle. But it was fun. It was fun. Rick was a great guy. I miss him still. I miss just going in and sitting with him and talking to him about the kids.
What's your experience with it?
What I remember about Rick coming to St. Mary's Hall is that when he was hired, we all knew that he was a published author. At that time, he had published a series of mysteries for adults. So it was very exciting knowing that he was coming already with some acclaim, and he seemed famous already to us. And I remember that he was incredibly disciplined. We were all impressed at how he would get to school. He already would have been up since very early in the morning working on his writing. He would teach his classes, which, as Deborah said, were incredibly exciting and enriching. He was known for coming in costume to different classes. I remember he would dress as George Washington when he was teaching about the Constitution. And then he would finish his classes and go right back to his writing. It was incredible that the whole time he was working here, immersed in his craft of teaching, which he did treat as a craft, he also was producing his mysteries, and then was shifting to, of course, the incredible children's series that he developed.
He said that he got a lot of encouragement from staff and from students here to publish, especially when he started writing about Percy Jackson.
I hope, and I think that he felt very well supported by the administration and the faculty at St. Mary's Hall. We were always so proud of him and so impressed with what he was able to do with the time that he had to do it. And he just was incredibly creative, so thoughtful, and just an interesting person. He's very quiet and reserved, but yet just with this incredible imagination that would come out when he was teaching and writing.
Did you see it rub off on some of the students, that his success and knowing that he was just their teacher as well?
Oh, absolutely. Again, even when he started, which was before the Lightning Thief series, before that had been written, he already was a celebrity to our school because he was a published author. And so there was a lot of interest in that. And then, of course, when the Lightning Thief was written, that was a whole new level for him and for the school.
I teach 7th grade science and have since Rick was here. And I remember his son came through my classroom also. I ended up being his advisor. And so we had some interactions from parents, this aspect of it. Not as much because I was teaching 7th grade. I was on a different team than he was, but I still kind of was able to kick in. And as Anne already said, you were very excited when he first started working here. And then when we found out that he was publishing his other book, and that he was going to be able to dedicate his life, that she was very excited about, to writing full time, we were all very happy for him. As it turned out, my husband, who taught Latin, well, he was teaching English. Was he teaching Latin yet? I think the transition was happening somewhere around then. But my husband taught English, and so was in the department with 10, and then it ended up moving into Latin, and ended up being in the book as well, which was fun for him.
What was his character? B told me.
His character was named Mr. Nickel. And I think he was a Latin teacher who came in to replace once the other, when one of them left or something. It was like a replacement teacher.
So you guys mentioned that he was already a published author when he got here. Did you expect this international?
I don't think he'd expected this international thing that happened. And we were all very happy for him. I mean, it was just a really neat thing to watch from here. And for the kids too, the kids were super excited about everything that was happening, which was great, because even some of the students got to be in the books as well. So that was fun for them.
How long ago was that? What do you remember the years that he was here?
Let's see, 1998 through maybe 2003.
Okay, so that's been a while back, almost
20 years.
Yeah, so a generation. So
I did yesterday.
right. So, but does this generation still relate to his work? Not just because he was teaching here, but from what you see from his.
From what we see, I think yes. I remember my class last year being very excited about the Disney series, and I remember then the girls were especially interested in McQuaid, who was playing the lead. And so, yes, I do remember a lot of the students getting very excited about him in the books.
And from what I recall from my interview with him, it's a lot about helping kids also, not just a fantasy, but helping them cope with their emotions and things that they're going through. Do you see that as well?
Definitely. I think a lot of students who are used to seeing sort of hero-like characters, he intentionally wrote his hero to have flaws and to have things that they overcome and can still be strong about. And I think that resonates really well with students today.